course. It's always pleasure to be particularly in person, having our hybrid Webit edition, both locations, Sofia and Miami, is a good start. But of course, we have to be aware of what is happening out there. And it's still not safe to bring all these tens of thousands of people all together because we are responsible, because we don't believe that we have the right to expose so many of you to challenges that are out there, but definitely looking forward to meet in person very, very, very soon. And we continue our discussion with the topics on education, and particularly educating people, growing society, and building future together as part of the AI Architects of Webit Global Impact Week, bringing over 100,000 people together to listen, to challenge, and of course, to network and to connect during these 4 amazing days together. We have the journalist from New York Post, John Aidan Byrne, hosting our next panel with so many amazing friends. John, the floor is yours.
Well, welcome everybody. It's an exciting panel coming up for Global Impact Week. And the topic of our discussion today is education, the architect of society, educating people, growing society, and building our common future. 2 special guests. We may have a third joining us later. We have Esther. You're going to have to help me with surnames here. She's the founder of Palo Alto High School Media Arts Program and Tract. That's fantastic. And Dr. Yaacov Hecht, founder at Education Cities. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping here. You can find us and share your thoughts and questions on social media this week on using the hashtag Webit, W-E-B-I-T. Very easy to remember that. And we urge people listening to utilize the TVS platform during the days of Webit Global Impact Week, coming to you from all over the globe. Now, I'm going to open up our panel with some wisdom, maybe some philosophy, call it what you will. I would like to start the discussion today with my favorite Chinese proverb. If you want 1 year of prosperity, grow grain. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow trees. If you want 100 years, that's a century, remember, of prosperity, grow people. I mean, that's just appropriate for our discussion today. We're here on this panel talking about education, how important that is to all our lives, young and old. And it's really the architect of society and our common shared future. Now, let's just going to open it up broadly to get our creative juices moving here. And both of you and the third panelist later, we hope, jump in. What do you think our children need the most in terms of skills, knowledge, attitude, and personal development in order to make the world a much better place? Maybe start with Esther.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to speak at Webit, one of my favorite conferences. The main thing that I think that students need, and this worldwide, not just in one country or another, is an opportunity to be creative and to have some control of their learning. So creativity and also critical thinking are the skills that we need for the 21st century. And right now, we don't have any creativity in the schools. And it's probably primarily because students are always told exactly what to do. They are tested on memorizing exactly what the professor or teacher said. And then their grade depends on how well they memorize. And it does not include creativity. It doesn't include communication. How do they learn how to be creative and to communicate more effectively with their peers when they are focusing on memorization only. So that's one of the big challenges that I think we face as a world, because worldwide, that is the way that we educate. And that was started actually in 1893 by the Committee of 10. And they said, these are the ways that you organize the subjects, and what kids have to do is memorize. And that was fine for the 20th century, where the main focus was following instructions. But today, the focus is creativity. How can we solve problems facing the planet? So that's my focus in general, is empowering students.
That's an interesting answer. You used the Committee of 10. I don't give into conspiracy theories, but when I hear of committees of 10 and committees of 5, it's like backroom deal. Just to explain who that Committee of 10 was, and then we'll get to our next panelist.
Well, the Committee of 10 were 10 very distinguished men from, they were, for the most part, in the English-speaking world. And they put together a way for the countries to be educated. And they divided everything into subjects like science and math and history and language. And there was no interaction between these silos. In other words, you went to your English class or your language class and you studied language. And then you went to your history class and you studied history. So today we know that there's a lot of interaction between all the subjects, and that just sticking to one subject all the time and not allowing the integration creates problems. But it worked back in those days, back in the 1800s and 1900s, because we didn't have anything else. This was really the first attempt to educate large groups of people. And most people couldn't read. And so they were learning how to read and to do math. And we succeeded. The world is literate. Everybody has a cell phone in their pocket. In fact, there are more cell phones in the world than people. And you wouldn't have a cell phone if you couldn't read. So people can read, that worked. But are people creative? Do we give people an opportunity to think independently and come up with creative ideas? Do we do that anywhere in school? And my answer for the most part is no, because just think, students that get straight A's or do the best are students who have memorized the best and who are able to tell the teacher back what the teacher told them. Yeah. And so we need creative solutions for the problems that face the planet. We cannot use the responses we had last century to solve the problems we face today. And that's what I think is our biggest challenge. How do we involve creativity in the lives of students?
That's great. I mean, some of our creative geniuses through history were not necessarily great academics, but we could come back to that. I want to bring in Dr. Yaacov here to get your response to my initial question. What do children need the most in terms of skills, knowledge, attitude, personal development?
I am totally agree with Esther, and I think we are in a time of changing the paradigm of learning. And I think that most of the countries in the world that call themselves today democratic countries, they adapt the education system that prepare people to live in undemocratic societies. So as Esther said, the basic old traditional school was a place that told the children what to do, how to do, when to do, with whom to do, and check them if they've done it. This is not prepare the children to democratic society. And I think a lot of things that we see today in the world, that people look for the big leaders that will tell them what to do. It can be in the work, it can be in our society. This is the successful of the old traditional paradigm of education. And if I see the new vision of school, I agree about creativity, but I bring another thing. I think that we need to leave democracy at school, or we need to keep human rights inside school. The freedom of thinking, the freedom of talking, the freedom to be yourself. This is something that need to be at school. So school need to be like a microcosmos of what we want to be, that will be our society. So if we want that our society will be people that sit on a chair for 6-7 hours and listen to someone, can be one picture. It's not, I understand, our picture of the future. But if we want to see creative democratic society, let's begin to do it in our classrooms.
Well, we're already seeing some transformation in the education system, certainly in terms of ideology, and that has a lot of critics, and we could look at that shortly. But both of you are urging some change and so on. What sort of specific and kind of building blocks should we see there to make it a better, more creative, wholesome education system? What are the things you're looking at? Esther?
I will be happy to answer that. So one of the things that we all use today is social media. Everybody uses it, whether they've been educated or not. And I think in the schools, you can use social media and journalism products as a way to teach students how to collaborate and how to be creative and to think critically. And that's what I did in Palo Alto High School. And I started with 20 kids in 1984, and I built that program. And the reason I built it is the kids came because they wanted and they loved to be independent. They love to be respected and given an opportunity to do and to write about things they care about. So I gave them that opportunity. As I said, I started with 20 kids in 1984, and today the program is the largest in the United States with over 700, between 700 and 800 kids. And they're all learning more about how to collaborate, how to be creative, how to think critically, and they're using media as a way to do that. Because most people don't ever study media. They just use it and they don't understand all the problems and all the tricks and all the situations that could be in some way not appropriate. And so that's what I did, is I gave them that opportunity to do that. And it's called Palo Alto High School Media Arts Program. And there are now 10 publications, all produced by teenagers, age 15 to 18. And you would not believe that it's teenagers. You would think it's professional. That's because kids are given this opportunity to be independent. And they all want that. It's just the school system doesn't provide it. And there are other ways to do it. But that from my perspective, ties into what Yaacov said about giving people a democratic experience in school. So, you can't prepare people for a democracy if you treat them like they're living in a dictatorship until they're 18 years old. How are they supposed to develop those skills? So I would say give them more of an opportunity to control their learning and to self-organize. My classes were very large, 60 to 70 kids in a class, and they were run by the students. Why by the students? Because I'm training kids for a democracy where they can learn to be leaders and work with each other. And I think a lot of it can be done in schools. It doesn't have to be a newspaper. It could be a project of any kind where you're giving kids an opportunity to work together. It could be a science project. It could be a history project. But giving kids the opportunity to be in charge and then to work in team.
Do you want to come in there, Dr. Yaacov?
Yeah, I'm interested in Dr. Yaakov's response here.
Yeah.
Also, this time I'm totally with you, Esther, and I hope to visit your school as soon as I can. And I think the idea that run all my practice ideas come from my deep believing that everyone is different and it's wonderful. I think the basic problem of the old traditional education that they want to give the different people the same goal. Why? Why? We are different, and this is the most beautiful thing. Think about another option that all of us was the same. For example, all of us will be Yaacov. This is catastrophe. We are different. So it cannot be different people with the same learning plan. So we need different learning plan, and we need that the children will choose this, what is implement to them. And they need to make mistakes and step by step to find what is their uniqueness. This is one thing that I think it's very, very important. The second thing is to live together. To live together it's very difficult. And especially if you are some hundreds students in the same house, it's totally different. And to find solution, how to live together, this is the practice of democracy. If we think that strong people will tell us how to live good together, this is a practice of dictatorship. So that's something that I feel that step by step, and I see it's all over the world now, school begin to change. And that's give me a lot of hope.
Both of you have used the word democracy, and Esther, you mentioned about the students running classes. So I'm wondering, where does the teacher fit in here? And also on that democratic side of it, where do parents fit in? Do they have a role?
Parents have a huge role. I mean, if you grow up in a family where you are not trusted and respected and given any opportunity to participate as opposed to just follow instructions, then you are not going to be a leader. You are going to always feel like you have to have someone tell you what to do. Parents are the child's first teacher, and they don't think of themselves that way, but that's the way I think of them. And frequently we get kids in school and at the age of 5 or 6, and some kids adapt very well and some kids don't. And I think the ones that don't are the ones that are always being bossed around and told what to do. I mean, the ones that are given an opportunity to think for themselves. I mean, just as a parent, just let your child help make dinner, for example, or let them help shop. When you go to the store, bring them along and let them help shop. Giving them responsibilities around the house is not treating them poorly. It's actually giving them an opportunity to be trusted. So parents need to do this, and the schools need to do this as well. And you're training people to think and to be independent. And if they're doing that 7 hours a day in school, they're going to learn how to do it. And if, Napoleon back in the, early times, he wanted to train everybody to follow instructions so they could all be part of his army. But we still kept this mentality now, and we don't need that. We don't need people that always follow instructions. Of course, we want you to follow the instructions when you're driving and when you're doing things in society, but you have to be able to believe in yourself. And unless you've tried doing things independently, you can't believe in yourself. And I wrote a book called How to Raise Successful People, and it's an international bestseller. It's in 25 languages. And in that book, I say there are 5 things that every kid needs in school and at home: trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And I call it TRICK. It's the model, TRICK. So you need to trust your students, give them an opportunity to be respected, give them independence, collaborate with them instead of dictating, and treat them with kindness. Schools are not kind places, and they should be. In order to learn, you have to make mistakes. And so, you don't want to be punished for all those mistakes all the time. You want to be given an opportunity to revise and to do it again. So, yes, I have very strong feelings about this. And so far, I've had thousands of students, and it worked with them. So that's why I feel strongly about it. I know it works.
Dr. Yaacov, what about your tricks? What do you suggest, and role of teachers, students, and again, this idea of democracy, which I find really interesting?
I think, like Esther, mistake is the most important tools to grow up, and school need to give a place to make mistakes, and this is the most important. It's not that the child make mistake by himself. We as adults exist there, and this is a very important role. We can work with him about what he done, but if the mistake it's what we do and we pull this mistake on the student, this is make catastrophe. And I think this is something very great, to make mistake and have space to make mistake. In my school that I founded 35 years ago, it's the Democratic School of Hadera, we make every week a meeting, we call it a parliament meeting. We are 600 students, parents, staff member, and we make all the rules together. We make all the law of the school, and we are a state school, so it's in the format of, we cannot change the government law, but inside I take all the power that I have as the principal of the school, and I gave it to our society, and so we make the decision together. And this is something very, very important. The second thing, I think something very important that we must to know, the best way to learn something is to teach. And it cannot be that the teacher will be only the adults. And we need to give a lot of places to the student to teach one another. And that's something that we do a lot in our school. And I think today we do it in not only in Hadera Democratic School, we do it now all over Israel. The idea of peer learning, that a lot of percent of what we teach in school, it's by the student to the student, or by the parents also, or by the staff member. So everyone is a teacher and everyone is a student. It's a very important situation.
Well, your records speak for themselves at both your organizations and schools. What about the role of private education, nonprofit, governmental run, values-based education, faith-based education, secular education? Can they all coexist?
So before we go into that, I just want to respond to Yaakov's statement of peer-to-peer. I think peer-to-peer is really important. It's actually, kids learn more from their peers than they learn from anyone else. And so I started a company in this pandemic called Tract, TRACT.app, and it's peer-to-peer learning online. It's teenagers teaching preteens. And it's very effective. And so far, it's only been up for 6 months, and it's already got thousands of kids. Why? Because kids want to work with other kids. That's why. And so anybody that's listening to this can get free access. It's free to all teachers, by the way. Any teacher that wants to use it can use it for free. And the code, I'll just make it Webit. Webit, it's just a simple word we all know, W-E-B-I-T. But peer-to-peer learning needs to happen. And if you go and take a look at all schools, you will see, walk around the school, and you'll see all the kids sitting in rows and the teacher talking. And where's the peer-to-peer? Where is it? And so, Dr. Yaacov, you must have really good schools because you're doing peer-to-peer, and that works. And as far as your question goes about the private schools and the public schools and all that, the thing that's very sad is that all the private schools are doing this. They are all doing peer-to-peer. They're all giving kids an opportunity to learn independently. And the parents, the kids are thrilled. The parents are happy. It's not fair. It's not fair to all the other kids stuck in the public system where it's mass. And it's like, listen to my instructions today, do what I tell you to do, or you're going to get an F, you know? So where is the independence in the public sector? I don't see it.
Yeah, and then we could talk about charter schools are popular now in America, although there's a lot of pushback at governmental level. But Dr. Yaacov, I want to bring you into this discussion.
This is a very important discussion because when we are talking about human rights, we are talking about the rights of every parents about his children. Who is responsible about the children is the parents, and the government come to help the parents. And the second thing is that it's in the human rights that education need to be free to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our big goal is to get good education to every child in the world. And this is something very big challenge that we do. We have now all over the world around 4,000 democratic schools, but most of them, they are private schools. And what I'm doing now all over the world, I go to talk in different parliament of different countries and try to convince them to recognize the democratic school as the official way of learning. That's what happened now in Israel. In Israel, we are official. Every city that want to build a democratic school can build it, and it's a lot. We have every city at least 2 democratic schools, and we have a lot of people that want to be in a different kind of democratic schools. And I hope that more and more schools in the world will be more democratic and more state school, not a public school.
So what is the democratic school called? What's the name of the schools?
Democratic schools.
It's just called democratic schools?
Yeah.
So these are government. These are financed by the government. These are not private schools.
It's in most of the world. It's private schools.
Okay, private and most. Okay.
In Israel, we have around 40 democratic schools, and there are state schools. So
they're free, but you favor a free model. It sounds.
Yeah, that's what we try to now convince all over the world.
Okay, there's this big ideological battle raging in the West over various ideologies. We see it with critical race theory. They're, pushing that at the school level, and people have their views on that, and parents in particular, because their kids are being educated. I'm going to sideline because I had an interesting interview with a former Democratic congressional staffer recently, and he left Washington in disgust with the whole swamp scene there, but he took up teaching in a charter school in a predominantly Black community. And his response was that the kids weren't worried about critical race theory. They wanted to learn their math and their spelling, and they were worried about getting home at night to a safe home. I'm just wondering, could we briefly talk about that, these ideological, do they have a place in education?
Yeah, of course they do have a place in education. I think what's going on with those kids is they aren't interested in having these political battles that are raging around with the adults. They just want to learn their, like you said, math and their reading and social studies. They want to be able to get up to speed so they can participate. And I think that a lot of this political stuff needs to stop, impacting the education and creating a lot of problems for teachers. So this program I have, the peer-to-peer, is very effective in those low-income communities, because what it's doing is it's allowing teenagers to be teachers, just like Dr. Yaacov was talking before. The kids that are the creators of these learning paths are learning how to teach. And they become leaders. And not only that, the younger kids look up to them. It's the way it should be in the real world. And I don't know what's going on in your schools in real life, but in my classes, they were always mixed grades, 3 grades in one class. And the older kids always took care of the younger kids, that everybody had a buddy. And so the idea was to help the younger kids learn. And it's through this, if you don't understand something, tell your buddy and he'll help you type of thing. And it also formed a sense of community. They all felt like they belonged, they had a place to go. Everyone was friendly. And so the classes were big. And so sometimes teachers will say, well, I have to have really small classes. I'm telling you, it works in big classes. You don't have to have
really
small classes.
Fascinating.
I
quickly ask both of you, what kind of metrics are you getting from your institutions? You're clearly successful, but do you measure it?
So this program ranked #1 in the US in terms more gold crowns, silver crowns from Columbia University than any other program in the country. And I'm giving kids the opportunity to lead. So just because you relinquish the leadership and give kids the opportunity to lead doesn't mean the quality goes down. It goes up, in fact. So the metrics and on the standardized tests, they test really high. So I don't teach to the test. Basically, what I'm doing is giving kids an opportunity to use the skills that they learn in an actual project. That's much more effective learning than it is if you're just sitting there memorizing, where commas go or where capital letters go.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work.
Dr. Yaacov, do you want to come in here?
I have a lot of things to say, but
Poor Dr. Yaacov.
I will answer your question about the mixed ages. It's most of the democratic school is from 4-year-old until 18, and it's totally mixed ages. We don't live with ages. And if I want to say what it's done and I will focus about Israel, I see the democratic school as a lab school that we develop a lot of new ideas, and we continue to do it in a regular school in Israel. And we work with, I think, half of the schools in Israel. And I will give you example. The 2 big reform of the old education system is come from the roots of democratic education. Or I will give you another example. The Minister of Education now in Israel, she was a teacher in democratic school in Israel. So the influence is very deep, and it's make that things begin to change. And this is something that I believe at all about the future, because I think the democracy doesn't stop at school. It's need to continue in the workplace and other places, but it's a big story now.
So I'm very excited about your democratic schools. And so I want to offer you tract for all your schools. After this conference, we're going to speak.
Yeah.
I think your schools are great.
Yeah, incredible.
I will say to you, Esther, that one of the classroom that we create, we call it a team model. And the idea is that we go to traditional school and we teach them as a school, as a classroom, to work that everyone is a teacher and everyone is a student.
Oh
and
my God, it's so great.
A lot of classes in Israel take this idea.
Dr. Yaacov, just real quickly, you have successful metrics also at your schools, correct?
Sorry?
Your graduation rates, your success rates, the students who go on to further education.
This is very exciting in Israel. And we are a little bit different, I think, from all over the world, because all the world is checking themselves to the PISA exams. And I think I represent a lot of people in Israel that don't believe in the PISA exams. I make because
I agree too with that.
but we believe in innovation in our new economy. I will explain. Israel was in the middle of the PISA exams in 2006, and Schleifer visit us and tell us that the economy will disappear. In this moment that he said that we will collapse, we grow up faster than any country in Europe. And our economy, we call it the knowledge economy, and it's coming by startup companies. So it's very important to our schools to see how many percent continue to the knowledge economy. And in our democratic school, we are much more than the average in our society.
But just so that we're very clear, both of you, there's tests and scores and so on, traditional ways of evaluating the students' abilities and what they've learned.
So we still do the tests because the country requires it.
Yeah.
But our students tend to do much better. We don't teach for the test. In other words, we teach kids things that are meaningful to them. You don't remember things that you memorize. You remember things that you actually do and are meaningful to you. So I just challenge you to go back and think about the classes you had in high school and try to remember even the names of the classes.
Yeah.
And most people can't. And so what you're doing with his democratic schools are really, kids are actually doing it. They're working together in teams. And I love this idea of a whole class goes to another school and tries to help them learn how to do the democratic system. It's a great idea. I think it's great, and you should continue doing it, and we should bring it more internationally. I love it.
I will say it's from and I agree totally with also in our school, children make the final exams, and we are quite good in these final exams, but this is not important. Yeah. What is important is, I think, we believe that everyone is a genius, and everyone, not 1% of the people is genius. And our goal is to find the uniqueness and the genius of every child. And this is something that I think that we are doing quite good.
Well, it's interesting, like way back in the day in some countries in Western Europe, in my own native Ireland, they would actually grade people by 1 to 40 in the class. He was number 1 and that kid was number 40. So the kid who came in 4th in ranking felt like a dummy. And funnily enough, the kids who were 40, 39 and so on went on to great careers later on because they were motivated to prove themselves that they weren't dummies. Everybody has some kind of an inherent God-given gift. But I wanted to talk about COVID because both of you were on panels and virtual panels at Webit during the height of the pandemic. And so it changed the way you rolled out your schooling system and your protocols. I assume there was more online learning. How did that go? What were the best practices you took away from that during COVID? Did it enhance opportunities going forward?
So I can just talk about my experience during COVID. One of the big problems is that every teacher, and there are usually 7 teachers during the day, wanted the kids to sit and listen to their lecture. And after actually 1 hour of that, you were already brain dead. No one can do that over and over and over again. So kids came up with these creative ways to solve it. They took pictures of themselves, put their picture on the Zoom, and then the teacher couldn't tell if it was the student there or not. Yeah. So the Zoom thing didn't work so well. And, everybody kept saying things like, I'm zoomed out, and they were. So what I did, which was, of course, a little shocking, is since I said my classes were democratic in many ways, like Yaakov's, I put the students in charge of the Zoom calls. And, they all showed up because it was a social experience. And they all got to talk to each other in these breakout rooms. It worked really well. These newspapers and magazines that I produced, there's 10 of them, they continued even during the pandemic because the kids were in charge and they wanted to do it. And they were not, having to sit through an hour of listening to me talk forever. They could talk to each other. So that's how I worked in the Zoom situation. So I'm interested to see what Yaacov did.
Yeah, what was your experience here?
I don't say my experience. I will say the experience that I see all over the world. I think we were in a big, and maybe we are in a very big revolution in education. And I will take one point. I think if you ask people globally, what is the most important thing? One thing that exists in that we need in the education system before the pandemic, I think people will say learning science, mathematics, something around computer, something like this. Today, if you ask this question, I think it exists consensus, relationship, the most important and the most traditional school believe in it. And it's not mean that they believe it's happened. It will take time. But I think in my believing words, it's coming before action. And we will see in the near future, we will see a big revolution in the area of education.
Well, wasn't that one of the great takeaways from the pandemic as far as education goes? That kids really want to be in the classroom. There was a terrible amount of social isolation during the pandemic.
That's right. It was terrible. The social isolation was really terrible. And the kids really love being back in school, even wearing their mask, And so we need to remember that the computer can help in many ways, but it cannot be the only way that kids learn. So I think the revolution this past year has been that you definitely need to be in the classroom, and the computer can be a support. Prior to the pandemic, I think most teachers did not see the computer as a support. They saw the computer as something that was annoying and that, they were supposed to use, but they didn't really know how.
I will say it's in a little different. I think the computer is not the solution. And also a classroom that you need to sit on your chair and listen to the teacher is not the solution. Two of them is not solution. Maybe school at all is not the solution. I think places that people can meet and learning and be socialized, this is the most important thing. And it can be outside school, inside school, in different places, and it can be breathing. It can be a little bit in the computer, a little bit in the park near your house, and a little bit in the school. So, yeah, to meet one another, it's very, very important, and you need to do it in different places, but don't confuse. I don't think that the student miss this classroom that they need to sit and listen to the teacher. It was the same situation with the Zoom. They don't like or unlike the Zoom. They don't like that someone talk with them 1 hour by video. This is catastrophe.
That's right.
But Zoom is not going to go away. It's not going to go away. It's going to be integrated somehow at some level.
Yeah. It will be integrated, but just like what Yaacov was saying, school is there's 3 important things in school. Number 1 is relationships. Number 2 is relationships. And number 3 is relationships. Okay. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of responds to my, wrapping up questions, if you will. You laid it all out, what kids need to grow happy and to become successful. A lot of it starts in school.
Oh, yes. Well, it's because no kid wants to hang out with their mother and their father when they're 15 years old, as a matter of fact. And kids want to be with other kids. It's normal, they want to be with their generation and do things with their generation. So we need to help promote that. And I think the democratic schools sound like they do it. And most public schools need to become democratic schools, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, and so let's look to the future as we're wrapping up here. Finally, the next decade, the next few decades, do you want to look at your educational crystal ball and what's in store for us?
I see in the future a big revolution, and it will take time. Maybe I don't will be here, but it will happen. And the situation is that lifelong learning is happen now. People doesn't learning when they are 4 to 18 or 25. They will learn until they will live, and maybe also later with the AI. So we will learn all our life. So the future learning centers will be mixed generation, not mixed ages. So as Esther say, she have 3 mixed ages. We have all the full mixed ages, but I agree with Esther. Reality, it's three ages that they mix together.
They all work together. It's a team effort, and that's what's going to happen in the future.
But in the future, it will be there. People, they are 20s, 30s, 90s, 100s. They live together, learn together, and action together. And that's something that you can see today in Israel in the startup companies. Startup companies in Israel, it's from around 14 to 18 people that work and learn together. And that's, I think, will be the future of everything.
So lifelong learning, we're in a knowledge economy, and both of you are in a great place to explain it all. You laid it all out, and it's been my pleasure. I believe we're out of time, if I'm correct.
I think so, but I want to thank you so much for allowing us to talk about this, because I think it's very important, and it's going to impact the whole world, not just United States, not just Israel, but every single country in the world.
I agree with you. You are correct. I have 4 grown kids, and I've seen how it works. You are right. And thank you both. It's been fascinating, and we will be talking again very soon.